to reconvene the meeting and welcome you all to the Coeur d'Alene School District 271 board meeting for November 6, 2017. So would the gentlemen please remove their hats and everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll be following that up with the national anthem performed by the Lake City High School Navy Blues under the direction of Mark Petty.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming.
And the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave
O'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Wow, what a way to start. Again, that was the Lake City High School Navy Blues under the direction of Mark Petty. Thank you all for being here tonight. Okay, so I'd like to go ahead and introduce our participants for this evening, and I'll start on my far right. First, I have Mr. Chris Shipley, our Director of Finance and Operations, Miss Lynn Town, our Clerk of the Board, and Dr. Stan Olson, Superintendent. To my immediate left is Mr. Tom Hearn, our Vice Chair, Miss Lisa May, Board Member, Miss Tambra Pickford, Board Member, and Mr. Dave Eubanks, Board Member. My name is Casey Morserow, and I'm the Chair tonight. Public comment on district-related items is scheduled near the start of this meeting. Please sign in on the sheet provided at the entrance door. Because of the diversity of issues, members of the board will not respond to public comment made during tonight's meeting. Instead, issues may be recorded and referred to the proper staff person for follow-up. Comments may also be submitted to the board in writing through the clerk. Okay, is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes for October 2nd, October 3rd, and October 23rd?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Eubanks. Any discussion on that? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries, Ms. Town. Mr. Eubanks, do you have our board recognition tonight? Invest, Inspire, Innovate? Yes.
Are we already there?
Yeah, we are. We're
Okay, let's get on with it.
We're plugging along.
Yeah, let me turn this on. Hey, each school month, our district, in partnership with the Coeur d'Alene Education,
Partnership and the Panhandle Kiwanis recognizes and honors 3 outstanding teachers in the Coeur d'Alene School District who do magical things with kids in the classroom. We call these awards the Invest, Inspire, and Innovate Award. And for the month of October, these 3 teachers are, first we have Nicole Bonney from Lake City High School, a special education teacher. And we had fun presenting the award to her. And now we have Carrie Dahlgren at Canfield Middle School. And then I guess we're just going to move right on to the last one here. Carrie teaches 6th grade, by the way, and is an awesome gal. She's been there a long time. And then the last one we have is an elementary teacher who teaches at Hayden Meadows Elementary, Jason Peebles, 2nd grade teacher, and again, just a magical teacher. These people don't just impact the kids they have in their class because they do such an amazing job. They impact generations of kids down the line. It carries through. So again, let's give it up for these wonderful teachers. Thank you. And do we have any Shining Star Awards? Not yet. Okay, all right.
I think next month we have to make up for the beginning
do
of the
some
year
catch-up.
a little bit. Okay, we're moving on to high school student body reports. I'm going to start with Coeur d'Alene High School tonight. Good evening. Just make sure the button's pushed, the red light's on there on the mic if you would, please.
Hello, I am Sarah Smith, an ASB officer at Coeur d'Alene High School. This month at CHS, we celebrated Unity Day on Wednesday, October 25th. Spark Club decorated the commons with orange decorations, and students and staff wore orange to show unity. The CHS Theater Department just finished their fall play, It's a Wonderful Life. It was a fun, humorous play, and they had a great turnout. Many of our fall sports teams recently qualified and participated at state competitions. Boys soccer, swimming, cross country, and football all qualified for state. CHS administration has noticed a change in attendance this school year. Our attendance rate has gone up substantially, with us averaging a 95.3% attendance rate. Our discipline referrals have also dropped approximately 33% from last year. As the new year approaches, Student Council is busy planning for Fight for the Fish, which is the second week in January. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I was at the football game on Friday. It was a great game. Awful cold, though. Let's see, Venture High School. Welcome.
Hello, good evening to you all. My name is Alex. Also with me is Valerie Martin. We represent the career technical education classes at Venture High School. Venture school year is flying by with learning and activities. Highlights for last month, including the following. The leadership class was awarded Excel grant to cut the cost of refurbishing the front of the school, and our placemaking activities will include planting shrubs, a tree, and lavender bushes in the spring. We plan to set the picnic tables and on cement pads and blow bark and bark nuggets. Members of the student body are currently working hard on digging the hole in which to plant the tree. Connie Drager and Matt Flieger also awarded the Excel grant. Their grant will be used for the cooperative program. This program offers education skills on how to manage stress, depression, and anxiety. This week signals the order taking and preparation of pumpkin rolls for our annual sale. Present and past culinary students will be volunteering their time on Friday to prepare and package 60 pumpkin rolls. Please stop by if you'd like to see our effort. Congratulations to Caleb Andrew Lane for earning her Serve Safe Manager certification. This nationally recognized certification, though National Restaurant Association, earning this certificate is a remarkable accomplishment. Thank you for your support of our school. We do appreciate all you do to help us be well-educated, responsible community members. Is there any questions?
Yes, that's right. We had pumpkin roll earlier for our earlier meeting, so thank you. They're delicious.
Delicious, yeah.
Okay, K-Tech. Anyone from K-Tech tonight? All right, Lake City High School, come on up.
Alrighty. Good evening, esteemed board chair, honorable trustees, Superintendent Olson, and district administration. My name is Kira Simpson, and I am the ASB vice president of Lake City High School. With me tonight are my fellow ASB officers, President Val Lagasosa, Secretary Taylor Pickford, and Treasurer Peyton Barber. Lake City has been focusing on community service this month. We did Codes for Kids during the month of October. 2 student council teams qualified for the STCU $100 project that is due at the end of the month. One promotes elementary school healthy eating, while the other promotes care packages for the homeless in our community. The Jingle Book Drive is now through the middle of December, and our annual food drive is the week of November 13th through the 17th. For college preparation, this week is college application week, so there are no fees for the applications of all Idaho schools. And the seniors this week will be going down during classes to sign up for Idaho schools. Activity updates. Our volleyball team placed second at state, and thank you to CHS for hosting the 5A tournament while we were hosting the 3A tournament. Our swimmers just got back from state. The boys took 6th while the girls took 5th place. We're very proud of all 26 swimmers that qualified for state. It's awesome. And we also had 17 musicians selected for the 2018 Idaho All-State Band, Orchestra, and Choir. This is an amazing accomplishment for them and their teachers, Tim Sanford and Mark Petty. We're all very proud of them as well. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you tonight, and we'll see you again next month.
Thank you all for being down here tonight. Just real quick before you run out the door, I just want to thank you guys for participating in our superintendent search stakeholder meetings. I know the search firm was very impressed with the students and their participation. So again, thank you for providing that valuable information. Have a great night. Mr. Twitchell, do you have a Coeur d'Alene Education Association report tonight? Welcome.
Why, thank you. Board members, Superintendent Olson, district representatives, thank you as always for this opportunity. It's just crazy to think that we're a quarter of the way through the school year already. It's just flying by. Every year when school year starts, people are always asking me if I'm ready, and I just tell them it doesn't matter if I'm ready or not. The kids are coming, and they keep coming every day too. And as we heard at CHS where I'm at, they are coming very strongly, and I haven't seen any numbers, but hopefully that's true throughout the rest of the district as well. And so, you know, the students come for a lot of reasons, to learn, hopefully, but also to socialize, to be part of a community. And it's a community I know that all of us are thankful to be part of. It's just a very strong community where a lot of good is happening. Speaking of the community, we are made up as well the employees of the district. We're fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, everything imaginable, and we're our own people. And as we have seen somewhat, that social media can be used inappropriately, and hopefully lessons are learned from that. I think it's important to realize too that people can express their opinions on social media, and that is not a direct reflection of how they are professionally. There can be 2 separate things on that. Along the same lines, I think it's important as a district that we don't have the idea that people can't speak up when they see something that they may not necessarily agree with, or when they think changes might need to be made. They need to be able to speak up without fear of retribution or consequences on that. Last week I had the opportunity to meet with Dr. Olson, Superintendent Olson, to discuss us moving to the interest-based bargaining. I can tell you that as the association, we're very excited to do that. We're very excited to get started with training on that and to get going with that. We see it as absolutely a very positive thing, a way hopefully that it's not just a month and a half of sometimes what feels like battling. Hopefully it's a lot more of working together and just having a lot more open discussions about it. And so we're really looking forward to that get going. Very excited too and happy with the superintendent search going on. Nothing against you, Dr. Olson. It's not that we want to get rid of you, but just look that it's happening. If I could offer one thing, though, with the recent, I guess, community involvement somewhat, I know myself, I got an email inviting me to go down and speak to the people that were in charge of that. And once I got there, and I was the only teacher there, they said, well, yeah, this was open to all teachers. I spoke to a lot of other teachers. They had no idea that it was even happening or that they were invited. And so I guess if more of these are happening, I would ask that somehow we get the word out a little bit better. But certainly we have encouraged the educators and employees of the district to get online and to use that form and to give feedback in that way. And lastly, I guess too, as we're starting to see remodeling is going to be happening soon at a lot of the schools. It's certainly going to cause some chaos, but with a lot of things, things have to get worse before they can get better. And hopefully that will be the truth with all these buildings, that they'll get better. And I would just ask that in the rare instance that there is surplus money, which I doubt will happen, but if it is, that there be some kind of a community involvement as to what to spend that money on. And that's all that I have for this week. So, I don't know, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Twitchell. Yeah, I think those invitations went out via email, and I think probably in this day and age, we all get bombarded with emails. So I agree. It was maybe a little unfortunate that not enough people realized that they were invited to participate, and certainly something we've noted, and we realize we need to do a better job of getting people in there. So thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you.
Okay, so now would be our normal time for public comment, but I have no one signed up for public comment. So we're going to move along. Dr. Olson, you have a superintendent report for us?
Yes, in the interest of keeping it short, we do have a bit on the agenda tonight. I just want to remind members of the audience, staff members, citizens, students, that we're moving into the second round of Data Summit. That is scheduled for November 15th here at starting at 9 o'clock in the morning, and by the urging of our first iterations participants, we're going to end a bit earlier this time. The 7-hour deliberation the first time kind of got everybody to pursue a shorter schedule. In any event, our focus this time will be primarily on secondary performance, ACT, SAT, concurrent credit, advanced placement, graduation rates, and so on and so forth. The general format will involve both presentation and interface, where we had an opportunity, and we all remember Dr. Nelson's excellent presentations of data and data sets in the first session, and then the facilitation by Kate Orozco to move forward on what those data meant to us and the questions and issues that we need to confront as we continue to make progress. We'll follow a similar format. Dr. Caudle will direct the primary back and forth between participants and the board and administration. We just want to urge people to participate. This is an opportunity for us to do a deep dive into our past, current, and anticipated future performance, identify issues, identify concerns, identify strengths, and identify challenges, and set the stage for deliberation on those findings this year and for the years to come as we set the table for the new superintendency. So we want to thank, there were a number of you in this room who participated in the first round. Bless you. And thank you very much for your participation and what you did for us. And we strongly urge that you return and continue to be a party to this process. It's an important one for the district, and it's one that we've learned a great deal from. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Olson. We've got a couple board trustee comments tonight. First, Mr. Hearn on the ISBA convention coming up.
I just wanted a very brief comments. This week, Wednesday through Friday, is the Idaho State School Board Convention in Coeur d'Alene. And there will be, I believe, around almost as many as 500 trustees and staff from around the state. In fact, we've kind of outgrown the Coeur d'Alene Resort, so I'm not sure how many more years there will be at that resort because of how crowded it's getting. Also, tomorrow, the head of the National School Board Association will be in town, and he's going to be coming to the district office, and then he's going to be visiting the Northwest Expedition Academy program at Hayden Lake Elementary School. So just wanted to let people know that we have a lot going on this week with this School Board Association, and I'm sure the public could go by and look at things if they're interested. But anyway, so I'll let you know that's happening.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Hearns. Trustee Eubanks, you have an update on Jingle Books?
I do. Hey, Jingle Books 2017, a community-wide book drive now in its 4th year to get new and gently used reading books into the hands and homes of our kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd graders, those in our district and beyond, is currently underway. With donation stations in every district school and multiple businesses throughout our community, our goal this year is to collect 50,000 donated books by the deadline of December 8th. And thereafter, in the last week before Christmas vacation, we will set up now 11 free book fairs in our elementary schools, so kids can come in and pick and choose whatever they would like to take home and keep to read according to their grade level. If everyone would please scour your closets, basements, barns, and garages for stored kids' books and turn them in, we will get them into the hands of our littlest learners. And if your kids have received any of the 85,000 Jingle Books that our district has received over the past 3 years, and they're finished with them, please considering recycling them by donating them this year. Remember, kids learn to read in K3, and then they read to learn starting in 4th grade. They've got to be ready to read by 4th grade proficiently. They've got to be reading at 3rd grade level at least. Without sufficient books in the home, particularly among poor kids living in poverty, learning to read is more difficult than otherwise. So this is all about improving early childhood literacy, a most critical pursuit for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Eubanks. I have just 2 things on here. One's just a board policy preview. As you know, we're working through Section 8000 right now. But coming up here in the next month or 2 is a policy 8300 P4, which is bomb threat and bomb threat reporting. I just want to point that policy out based on what's been going on here lately. The staff's looking at that, and along with the board member, we'll be working on that and just updating that policy to modernize it, unfortunately, based on the world we live in. So that will be coming shortly. The other thing I just wanted to remind everybody is Excel has their big event this weekend on Saturday over at the Coeur d'Alene Inn. Tickets are still available for that. It's always a great time. That's their big fundraiser for the year, so that's really important. And as you've seen in the consent agenda here, we'll be approving their grants for this year, and I believe they distributed about $160,000 almost to teachers within our district through their grant program for adding innovative new ideas, technologies, and components into their classrooms. So thank you to the Excel folks. Okay, there's nothing further. Let's go on to our consent agenda here. Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda items A through G?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I just wanted to follow up on the comment you made about the Excel grants. It was $156,992 worth of grants, and I read that list and was incredibly impressed. And I just want to publicly say I appreciate what Excel has done for the district over the years and continues to do. It's some of these grants, if people, you have a chance, it's all public record and a chance to read some of the things that students and teachers are working on. It's pretty impressive. So I want to give kudos to Excel.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hearn. So all in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, consent agenda approves, Ms. Town. And we are into our information items. Up first, Item A is a report on our annual audit from the folks from Magnuson McHugh, and it looks like we have Chris Mayhew and Michelle Shynai Handline. Good evening. Do you have a presentation?
I do have a
Okay.
presentation.
They'll get it up there.
Is it coming up? Okay.
And if you just kind of prompt them, they will click it through
Click
for
it.
you.
All right. All right. Hello. Good evening, trustees and superintendent. It is a pleasure to be here this evening to present to you the audit of the Coeur d'Alene School District as of June 30th, 2017. Go ahead. Just to say a little bit about myself, my name is Michelle Shynai Hainline. I'm the director of the audit services at our firm. I've also been a partner with the company for over 20 years and have been performing governmental audit engagements for over 25 years. I also wanted to mention Chris Mayhew. He's over here, and he is the audit manager and has been with our firm coming up on 5 years here in January or in December. And he's actually the in charge on your engagement and does most of the boots on the ground and a lot of the review and overviewing all the procedures as we go through this. So one other thing to point out, I was going to mention that we have Yellow Book that we're all required to meet. And what is Yellow Book? It's basically specific continuing education classes that we are required to take in order to be eligible to perform governmental audit engagements. So it's about 40 hours a year of accounting and auditing and 24 hours specifically identified to governmental auditing over a 2-year period. So a lot of education goes into being able to perform governmental audits. So next. Okay, so what is an audit? We'll start with an audit is an examination and evaluation of the financial statements to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from material misstatements. Remember, management is responsible for the presentation of the financial statements, and the auditor expresses an opinion on the information provided. So the book that you hold in your hand is yours. It is primarily all of yours, and the only thing that we have in that relates to us is the equivalent of 6 pages, so that we will go through in a little bit here. So go ahead. So why is an audit required? Well, there's actually several reasons why you are required to have an audit. And any entity receiving federal funds are subject to financial statement under audit under the government auditing standards under the uniform guidance. Also, federal government requires an audit for entities that have exceeded $750,000 in federal expenditures, and this is what we call the single audit. It's specifically identified to major programs and federal awards. And in addition, the state of Idaho requires every audit, governmental entity to have an audit if they have expenditures in excess of $100,000. Go ahead. Okay, so your audit results and what is that saying for you? So again, it's, like I mentioned, we have only 6 pages in this entire bound report that is ours. So talking about the pages 1 and 2 was our audit on your financial statements. And you again once received an unqualified opinion, which is the highest level opinion you can receive. And what does that say? It basically states that the reasonable assurance that the statements are free from material misstatement, your presentation is adequate, and so are your disclosures. So going on to pages 62 and 63, this is our opinion on the internal control over financial reporting and compliance with laws and regulations. And again, I'm happy to say that there was no issues or no findings with your internal controls or compliance with laws and regulations. And our last opinion in the report is on pages 64 and 65. And this is our compliance with major federal programs. The major program fund that we tested this year is called the Nutrition Cluster, or more commonly referred to as Food Services. And this is what I referred to as the single audit. And once again, you had no deficiencies over compliance in relation to the federal awards. So all great news on all of the opinions that we have issued, all clean. No deficiencies noted. So that's great news. Okay, go ahead. Okay, so actually the most interesting part of this whole bound report is what I we call the management discussion and analysis. And if you really wanted to have a better understanding of what really happened in the financial aspects and trying to read this part, the financial statements, I refer you to read to pages 3 through 11. And this is actually written by the Director of Finance, Chris Shipley. So thank you very much. So what this does is provides basically a management analysis of the year's activity. It also talks about a few of the financial highlights. And Chris mentions in the MD&A that your overall revenue has increased from prior year by 6.3%. And this is primarily due to the federally funded programs have increased. You had taxes levied for debt service, and also you had a gain on a sale of some property, increasing your overall revenues. He also talks about the supplemental property tax levy that was generated $15.4 million in the general fund revenues, which this represents 16.4% of the total general fund revenues, supplemental. And then also at the very back of the MD&A, he talks about the future outlook for the district. A couple things that he points out is the state funding and how it relates to the attendance. Some information on enrollment for the 2017 and 18 fiscal year. Talks about the long-range planning and also the bond and supplemental levies. Okay, go ahead. One other comment that he pointed out on the financial highlights, and this is that the district finished the year with a general fund balance of $4.5 million, which represents 6.7% of your total expenditures. And this is actually an increase of $16,000 from prior year. There was a 5-year trend of a declining fund balance up until this last year. So that's a good sign of an increasing fund balance. And also just to point out, your actual revenues for the general fund and actual expenditures were below budget this year. Okay, go ahead. So we talk a lot about fund balance in the general fund. So I just wanted to comment on why is the fund balance important from an auditor's perspective. So as we know, revenue streams are not consistent from month to month. Property taxes and state revenue come in inconsistently, and you can't rely on it entirely. It protects the district from unnecessary borrowing. It provides prudent resources to meet unexpected emergencies and protect against catastrophic events. It helps meet uncertainties of the state and federal funding, because there's nothing as a guarantee, and help ensure a credit rating that would qualify the district for lower interest rates in case borrowing was ever needed. And lastly is to help ensure future financial stability of the district. Go ahead. Okay, so what does the GFOA recommend? The Government Finance Officers Association has a recommendation at a minimum that the general purpose governments should maintain no less than 1 to 2 months of regular general fund operating expenditures in your fund balance. So as of right now, you have $4.5 million in your fund balance, and about average is about $5.6 million. It would be 1 month of your expenditures in your general fund. So it's a little bit lower than the recommendation, but it's good to see that it's coming back up. Okay, go ahead. Okay, here's just an overview of the last few years looking at your general fund balance. You can see there that we were talking about in 2011, 2012, it kind of peaked. And like I mentioned, the last 5 years after that have declined, and 2017 we're starting to see another increase in your fund balance. And that's it. So any questions?
If you could go back to that previous slide, you can see where the fund balance really went up, starting in 2010, I guess, and then up into 11, 12, and 13. Was that primarily due to the American Recovery Act? The infusion of money from the Obama administration?
Chris, can you answer that?
I believe it was.
Back in that time?
I wasn't your auditor during those years, but I know that those ARA funds, as I've been kind of looking at the history of your financial statements, that was a big impact on that. And then we have leveled out, and then we have had this slight erosion. And then this last year, $16,000 for our budget size was a slight increase.
Very.
going forward.
Yeah, remember some of the ARA funds, though, are your special revenue funds, and this is specifically related to your general fund. Mm-hmm. So, but imagine it does have some impact.
It does look odd that all of a sudden there's a great deal of money there, and I believe that's where it came from.
Right.
It wasn't like we suddenly saved a whole bundle,
No.
although we'd like to do that. Thanks.
Just point out there too, Trustee Eubanks, if you'll recall, we, I don't know, 12 or 18 months ago, the board set a number of goals, and one of those was to end that cycle of deficit spending. So it was nice to see we were able to do that.
That's right.
It's one thing to say, it's another thing to do it.
And some of us had a great deal to do with that. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Questions?
The finding of unqualified, is that right?
Clean
Which
opinion.
means-
Yeah, unqualified opinion is a clean opinion, the highest level you can receive. It's kind of backwards
So
language.
how often is that the case when you're doing government audits?
Most of the time on our routine audit clients, it's very rare that we actually have a modified report. We try, if we do, obviously, then there's a lot of training and coaching in order to get them so that we can get it to an unqualified opinion. So that would be the majority.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming down tonight and presenting this to us.
Thank you very much.
Questions? Good night.
Good night.
Okay, item B, Mr. Shipley, you have a capital construction update for us?
I do. Hold on, let me just get rid of this. Okay. So in your board packet going forward, what I have is,
Do you know what page number that is?
okay, cool. All right, great. So this right here, and I've mentioned this in a couple of our meetings before, and this is going to be
Thank you.
presented in every board meeting going forward. And what this is our budget to actuals for the 2017 bond project. The only thing that's not included on this is the $1 million for future land purchase. So this, what's important about this comes right out of the school district's financial system, if you will. So we don't have separate Excel work papers that each of us are using on the side. This is strictly from the source as invoices are presented. Actual construction activity, it's been a little slow. There was asphalt laid down on Dalton. That's been the big go ahead. And then going forward now, we're still continuing to finalize our plans, and then we'll be going out later for bids. And once those bids are released, then they come back and we get those opened up, and the construction season opens. That's when I'll have a lot more to talk about, obviously, going forward on construction issues. Okay.
Mr. Shipley, do you have, or could you give us just an idea for our consumption and the public consumption, just kind of time frame on bids and that sort of thing, just generally, or Mr. Martin?
Yeah, well, I have a lifeline here in case I mess up. Come and tackle me on the stage. Okay. So these normally get staged out, and we'll go with our bigger ones first, which would be the two high schools, Coeur d'Alene High School, Lakes High School. These then, as these are staggered out, we'll go to our next, which would be the middle school, and then, I thought I had a cheat sheet here. Lakes Middle School and Dalton Elementary would be the next two. And this is after the holidays, so we're looking in the January timeframe as far as opening up bids. And then the next bid coming down would be for the new elementary. But that, of course, is going to take place after purchasing of land and plans are being drawn out. So that one's still up in the air as far as nailing down a timeline on that one.
So do you have any idea when you'll start knocking down walls and working on things like Coeur d'Alene High School, the new entry? Is that going to be in the springtime? I just wonder if it'd be done by graduation or not, or we're talking about next fall.
Yeah, the Coeur d'Alene High School and the specifics, there is some construction work that can happen while the students are still there. But again, the majority of it, when we're talking about knocking down walls, that's when the students leave. And then the timeline on the completion on that is for, I'm not sure about the graduation, if they're going to be done by graduation. I'm getting a head shake no.
Just wondering. Okay.
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 Okay, any other
I
questions for
believe-
Chris on that? Okay. Moving along, Mr. Shipley, item C is your finance report.
Okay, finance report.
This starts on page 93.
Wonderful. This, again, this is... So I'd like to keep these reports the same going forward for each board. I mean, just so there's some consistency in how I message out. And then I'd also like to then, towards the end of my reporting here, add a little tidbit, something new, because the amount that I could talk on would just go on and on and on forever. So continuing here, starting from the top, this is actually for the month ending. So this is all the way up to the end of September 30th, 2017. And really, if you look through here, no big surprises have come to our attention. One thing to know, we noticed this last month during the report, still holds true that school districts, we get a lot of money up front. So if you were to slide your finger down on the second column over on that actual, even all the way down to the bottom there, you can see the ending equity balance is $25 million. That's not going to happen. That's just as of September 30th. So I didn't want people to think like, oh, hey, we are swinging large with the fund balance. Not true. And then, of course, what you really want to take a look at, mentioned this before, I'll keep mentioning this, is that the majority of the expenditures within the school district, salaries and benefits, so we have a separate breakout for that. And what we do at the district office is that we continually watch these figures as they come through. And what I've noticed, what I can tell you being somebody new in this position who has been an auditor and now kind of getting more into the weeds, is that school districts are much more dynamic than what you would think from on the outside. So obviously, as information is brought to us month to month, the picture becomes more and more clear about where we are at far as mark to budget, if you will. But right now, I don't see any concerns to raise my hand saying, hey, we're in trouble, or hey, we're really rolling in the dough, plan for the future to spend more money. One thing that I am taking a look at, though, is that if you go on top there and you slide your finger down that budget line, there's a figure there for transfers in. This is just for the general fund. That figure is $750,000. And then so I carry with myself, I'm still a CPA, a level of professional skepticism. So when I look at that number, my professional skepticism rises up saying like, hey, is that a number that we're really going to be able to meet? So it's one that I really want to look into. That transfer in doesn't just come from outside school district, that comes from other funds. So I just want to just kind of raise my hand and just point it out to the board now that that's something that we're looking at. Okay. Going next page. This
Mr.
is just a username. Okay.
Mr.
Sets
Shipley,
on it.
just real
Yeah.
quick before we skip to the next page.
Sure.
On page 93 there, just at the bottom in the notes, year-to-date expenditures, and I know we're super early into the year, but they're tracking, 1.5 higher than they were last year at this time. Any reason for that? Or
Well, that one, that's something that we want to keep. I have notes on myself here on this. It's something that we want to keep our close eye on because we had the 2% increase, and this is largely going to deal with the payroll. And I guess I need to kind of knit back to that comment that I just made. As we get more payroll under our belt, we'll have a clearer and clearer picture. That 1% increase, it doesn't have me worried. When you get percent increases that get in the 3 to 5% range, you really kind of want to raise your hand there. But I think this falls in with the normal distribution of what we'd call just like noise within the data. That next page is really dull and boring. It's almost as exciting as this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip ahead until that comes back. And what I wanted to talk about, you don't have a piece of paper for this, but it's clearly easy to understand what I say to you. So I'll just talk that. All right, okay, here, we'll go back to that then. Really, there's different ways you could pivot your data and how you label it out, whether it be by function or by just by payroll. This one here is broken out by function. And really, this is something that we'd look at compared to budget. And what you want to do here is kind of scan down. Is anything here out of line, or does it not make sense? If it's high percentage, why would that be? Well, if it's technology related, okay, well, that makes sense because you'd want to buy that at the beginning of the school year so the students, staff, the school district can make use of that purchase throughout the year. So when I look through here, is there anything to be concerned or really to raise my hand out and say like, hey, this is something we need to look at or be careful of? I don't think so. We're tracking on. That's one thing about the school district is that we're fair. There's a bit of dichotomy in saying this, that there is some a lot of moving parts, no doubt, but in a lot of what the school district does, it is routine. The AP, the payroll cycle is fairly routine. And fairly routine year to year, especially within the general fund. But going forward, which I think is one of our more important tasks that we have as governance and also as management with the school district, is guiding us forward. And so what enrollment does for us is help us decide about buildings, but what funds us is average daily attendance. And then so we just got back our first reporting as of 10/30/2017, and the support units was 505.61. We budgeted 504. So that tells me we're pretty good at budgeting that number, but what we really hoped for is that number would have been higher because we had increased enrollment. But again, it comes back to ADA and how important that ADA factors into how the school district gets paid from the state. So I think we're going to be pretty right on, and so I'm pretty comfortable with where we are with budgeted revenues, which gives us a good place to make decisions about what we can afford and how we plan out our expenditures going forward. Now, with that being said, going forward, what I really want to take a look at and what we're focusing on at the district and at our level is just the impact of expenditures, especially within our transportation and special education, and how our school district has been and how we spend our money in those two areas, logistically and also financially. Okay, I'm open for questions here, and also you can always ring me up if you have a question that's later down the road. I work for you.
Any questions for Mr. Shipley?
I have a couple when they're after the board.
Sure, I have one, if there's no one else. And then we'll get to you, Dr. Olson. Chris, I've had some people just ask, with the events that happened at Lake City High School there was, a lot of concern and high absenteeism there. Can you tell me how that impacts ADA and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so there is a process for this. So going forward, it's going to be treated. So I reached out to the state. And then so for a situation like that has to do with security, much akin to how we would treat a snow or a weather day. So coming near to you far as the timeline. So I will have some documentation for you guys. It's a board action to look over. It just, with this being a unique situation, there's just still a few items that I need to knock down to make sure that we do it right, and we do it right the first time.
So is that an emergency declaration? Is that what we call that? Okay. All right, thank you. Dr. Olson, go ahead.
Yeah, just one quick question, and you can ping pong this between the members of the budget team here. What percent of our budget over the last, let's say, 3 years has been dedicated to salaries and benefits?
I have it in my MD&A too. I can take a look. Usually you're going to be at your 85, 86%. I just shot that right from the hip.
Yeah, it's above 85%. And yeah, it's the high 80s, I would say, in the end. If you're looking at actual expenditures or budget expenditures, if you're including benefits and all that, it's just, we look at those numbers quite a bit, so I can't pull that one right out.
It's been in the mid-8, or not mid-8, in the 88 range, I think, the last.
Yeah.
88 is the safe number?
I would, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Now,
think that
compared to
the
actuals,
88
right?
might be the budget number, and then 86 might be the actual.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks. Nope, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shipley. Okay, next up is just a superintendent search update. The folks over at McPherson Jacobson actually volunteered to come here tonight and give us this update, but I excused him from that. But he did provide me some notes, so I just thought I'd go through those. These are for community information and the board. First off, McPherson Jacobson completed their 9 community staff and stakeholder interview sessions during the week of October 24th and 26th. They've also conducted an online survey. That survey closed last Friday, November 3rd. Tomorrow afternoon, the board will be meeting with the folks there from McPherson Jacobson, and they'll be giving us a oral executive summary of those discussions. And then in the coming weeks, we'll receive a hard copy report just detailing the items and information that was generated from those surveys and the stakeholder interviews. Lead search consultant Dr. Dean wanted to indicate to me that they've received several inquiries about our position, and they've even had a few completed applications. They were fairly surprised by that because this is very early in the process. So he viewed that as encouraging and wanted me to pass that along. On the screen there for us is some screenshots of a brochure that's been developed really to advertise the position. And Scott Mabin in our office and Victoria Michaels really took the lead on this and did a lot of the legwork with some input from the McPherson Jacobson folks, but they really did a nice job. I'm sure that's available online through Mac and Jack's website, but they really did a nice piece there. And then just one final point here. Just want to remind you, we have a board meeting with those folks tomorrow here at Midtown Center, I believe at 4 o'clock. And that agenda's a pretty busy agenda there. We're going to get that executive summary on the stakeholder sessions. They're going to update us on the advertising activities to date. We're going to be selecting interview questions for the finalist interviews that will be taking place in January. We're going to discuss and develop our schedules for when we're doing our finalist interviews and what those days are going to look like. We'll have further discussion on contract and compensation. And then we're going to discuss the search activities that will take place between November 7th and January 2nd when the position closes. And we're expecting probably an hour and a half to 2 hours for tomorrow's meeting. I think we're noticed for 2.5 hours, but they think we'll be a little short of that. So that's 4 o'clock in this room. And that is open to the public if anyone wants to join us for that. Any questions on that?
Casey, are you wanting us to have questions prepared? Are we going through stock questions?
So I think I don't have a great grasp of their procedure, but I think they're going to have a number of questions or a lot of questions, and then we're going to narrow that down. Back when we did our interim search, I think we targeted 10 to 12 questions. They actually target a little higher than that as far as the board interview. It'll be more in the 16 or 17 range. I know they bring a number of questions with them, but I think if there's specific things we want to ask, obviously, we can discuss that tomorrow. So if you have some questions in mind, please bring those. Okay. We're cruising right along here. Item E, Dr. Cottle, is the ad hoc committee application information. And I think that's on page 97, board members.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Morrisroe, Superintendent Olson, and trustees. It's not often that we ask for an ad hoc committee for a procedure. The reason we are is over the past few years, high school principals have been receiving concerns from parents regarding which classes we choose to weight in calculating GPA and class rank. We've had some parents concerned that we are not weighting our dual credit college courses and are only weighting AP courses. We have some parents that think courses should not be weighted at all. Unfortunately, we've had some situations where it's actually negatively impacted some of our seniors. And at the same time, colleges and universities are changing what they look at. No longer is class rank very common among most of our higher institutions. And so what we're requesting is, because of the controversial nature, that we form an ad hoc committee to look at the high school honors distinction and class rank. Both of these items are part of our 2700 procedure tied to graduation. In the past, we have recognized students at graduation as valedictorian or salutatorian, and that was the purpose of establishing a class rank, was to really decide who is going to speak at graduation. So we would like to look at the honors distinction as well as what we weight. The purpose of this committee would to do some research, not just base our recommendation to the board on opinion, but actually research what are colleges really looking for, what are other high schools doing around the country, what is the best practice, and then provide some input to the board to make a recommendation on how to change those policies.
Can you give us a little idea what you anticipate as far as this process for a timeline, how long that's going to take? I think how we'd roll that out as far as when it would start impacting students, and just a little of that information.
The earliest class it would impact would be this year's 7th graders, which is the class of 2023, I believe. If the committee, and that's if we're able to conclude our work by the end of the school year. If it takes us a little longer, then we'll have to push it back to this year's 6th graders. We want to make sure we're doing our due diligence. It won't impact any students right now in the system. We would like to include parents of younger students that will be impacted, but as well as parents that have had a negative experience because of this policy, or parents that like our current policy. We envision the committee meeting, but also having some public events for parents that aren't part of the committee to weigh in. We want to take our time and do our due diligence before we bring any recommendations. I don't know if that answers your question.
So we would adopt this policy maybe by the summer sometime, right? It looks like the work is going to be done in May, is what you're saying, or the meetings anyway.
Correct. So.
And but it's not going to impact students for a few years down the road, obviously.
Correct, because we don't want to change the game midstream for our current upperclassmen.
I hadn't heard that there was a lot of complaints about there, was there? I mean.
Yes, we had several parents.
I guess I didn't hear about it. Maybe.
Yeah, I had a
parents of high school students have maybe heard about it. I just hadn't heard about it.
Yeah. We've had some high school parents that have had students take both AP and dual credit, and depending on the level of college dual credit course, they thought it deserved to be weighted. We've had some students that take quite a bit of AP courses and then went to take like student leadership, and because they took a course that was not weighted, it impacted their GPA. And then we're also finding that it's all about the GPA and class rank and not about the learning. And so that's what we really want to look at. What message are we sending when we weight classes, and then when we're honoring students at graduation? Do we want to just honor 1 or 2 students, or many students that are doing high quality work?
You had talked about taking a look at a collegiate structure for honors. Can you take off on that just for a few moments and just
Yes.
update the board on what consideration that would be?
Yeah, a lot of colleges use what's called the Latin system. And what the Latin system does, instead of having a valedictorian or a salutatorian, it basically has honors groups based on their GPA. So for example, students with 4.0 or higher would be summa cum laude. And then there's a group that's like 3.75 to 4 is magna cum laude, and then 3.5 and above is cum laude. And so all students in those groups get recognized at graduation. And then oftentimes they'll take the top students, the summas. I like to think of summa wrestlers, that's how I remember it. And they will have some different process to determine who actually speaks at graduation.
Thank you.
Any questions on this?
I think it's a great idea that we look at this topic. It's going to be talked about, I think, in the future. My only concern is looking at Board Policy 1310 and how it lays out how we look at procedure and policy and where it comes from. And I feel that this should be a superintendent-driven approach to this issue. So I think if we want to do it through an ad hoc committee, I'm totally okay with that, but I would like them to report to the superintendent and then have the superintendent give us the procedure or policy that we would be looking at for consideration. I think it's too murky, and there's too many people that feel strongly on both sides for it to be, I would like to see it go through our new leader, and I worry that he won't be here up and running until our hopeful start date, which wouldn't allow us to really make a decision in the end of the year. I think we can start the process, but I really think that our superintendent deserves to weigh in on this, how he wants to see it handled, because it will affect him ultimately, because there's going to be people on either side who feel very strongly about this. So maybe what's your thought on that? Do you?
I really definitely don't want to rush.
Yeah.
I do know that the high schools are grappling with it, and it will take some time to implement. I mean, it's really up to the board. If you want us to wait to change, policy or procedure when the new superintendent's on board. But I would definitely like to at least begin the work. I think it'll take some time to do some investigation and some research.
Yeah, I think the process is going to be really important for this too, and how it's rolled out. And so I think under the leadership of our superintendent, it's going to be, I just worry that, the ad hoc committee only has 5-6 people on it. Is that a fair representation of the community? Now, if you're going to go do focus groups and surveys incorporated in that ad hoc committee, that's fantastic. So I think that work needs to be done. But I really think the superintendent should be kind of in the mix on being involved in this. I think it's important, and I definitely want to do it. I just, if we start it before he or she gets here, then they kind of jump on midstream. And if we're not going to make changes before, 6th or 7th graders now, would you be okay with waiting, or is it something that you really feel?
I really feel strongly that we need to get started on this work. I mean, I know we're in a process where we're waiting for who the new superintendent will be, but I think there's still work of the district and the work of the day that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things that I mean, especially when it's negatively impacting students, I really don't want to delay. I mean, it's their future. And if
So you think it's negatively impacting students that are taking classes for dual enrollment? Those are the students that you're referring to.
Well, it's also negatively impacting students that are taking AP courses. So what's happening is that students are taking classes not based on what they want to do after high school. They're taking classes sometimes just because of the GPA.
Yeah.
And so right now, as a district, we're really trying to improve that pathway, what students are doing beyond high school. We want to prepare them. And so they need to be making decisions based on what pathway they choose and their four-year plan, and not based on, what their GPA will be or what the grade will be.
I think, unfortunately, that's an issue that colleges are also grappling with, to be honest. And so those parents that are wanting those students to take lots of AP courses is for a reason, because they want them to get a class rank so they can get the scholarship. So these parents are extremely vested in this change in policy, and so it's going to be a tough one, Trina.
It is. Well, I see it as controversial. I mean, we may not have I mean, we probably won't have anything
I
by
think there's
May.
a solution. I definitely think we can make strides to improve what we're doing, and dual credit students deserve to be acknowledged for their work. I'd like to see the process be slow and steady and under the guide of our new leadership. I'm willing to say, okay, let's get it going. If you want to, be in charge of the process in the infancy, but maybe I'm double speaking, but I feel anxious without letting our new leader kind of weigh in on this a little bit. But.
And something that may help you, if the board approves the ad hoc committee, then what would happen is that we would put an application out there. It would take a month to gather those that are interested, and then the committee members would come to the board in December. So I don't see, if we were to start moving forward now, I don't see the committee starting to meet until January. So even if we did start now, like I said, we probably will not have anything by May.
What's
and
the
new
minimum number of
superintendent
members
could come
you would feel comfortable with? Yeah.
Pardon?
What is the minimum number of members that you would feel comfortable with?
I would like to have a robust group. I would like to have 20 or 30 people,
Right,
so that way we can, have some subcommittees that can go out and do some research and bring things back to the whole committee. And if we're going to do some public events for parents, we'll need more boots on the ground.
Definitely.
And if we don't have those numbers, then we postpone until we get
Yes,
those
that would be
numbers?
up to the board, but we could definitely, it's
And that's really
your
at our
preference.
discretion, is
Right.
how many people are on that board or that committee, and what's the makeup. And, I think over the past year, we've looked a lot at making sure that those those groups are balanced and, cross representative of our community, and that they're not, it's kind of like church. You get the same people always raise their hand and always come and help. And we need to make sure we're not just hearing the same voices all the time. So,
correct. It is up to the discretion of the board. So if if the list is not where you want it to be, we certainly can pause or, move forward in trying to recruit more folks.
I'd like to see you move forward on it, since you point out there is a problem. Other people on the board are recognizing there is a problem. I don't see why the information couldn't be summarized for the new superintendent by Stan. And, we can't, it's pretty seamless moving forward. I don't think we should wait on this.
I also think Stan, Dr. Olson, could be of great service in this. I don't think we should delay this at all. I think we need to get right on it.
Well, it has the opportunity to fit in with our data summit process, and when we start summarizing and distilling down an agenda, these things would dovetail to some degree. I do concur that the process, if it's done well and done deliberatively, and I'm positive it will be, will involve a great deal of input from the community. This is, Trina has mentioned it on a number of occasions, this is not an easy one. And there are some very definite opinions that go a number of different ways on this. But if we get to the point where it seems like it's going to be one of those snow day types of decisions where 50% of the people are saying call it and 50% of the people are saying not call it, I think we'll have to look at some sort of assessment of the parent group of the emerging youngsters, those who are coming into graduating classes that would be affected by it. So we can give the board not only the information as to how the system might work, but what the general consensus of the community is on moving forward. So they'll have that before any sort of decision is recommended or any sort of action is taken.
Are you comfortable if we tie into this, though, that the recommendation or the committee will report to the superintendent, and the superintendent will prepare a proposal or procedure to us?
Yes, whatever the board decides is the best course of action to go forward. I'm
I think
totally fine
that's the
with
only way
that.
I'm comfortable with it at this stage. I think this.
what do you?
Well, because
I'm
Trina's,
not quite following.
because how ad hoc committees generally work now, the ad hoc committee makes a recommendation and they present it to the board. I'm saying I'd like to hear this recommendation on this new procedure come from our superintendent. So he's synthesizing the information, analyzing it, and presenting it to us based on his best belief of what suits our district. I mean, it says that clearly in policy 1310 about, how we put policy into practice, and the superintendent shall develop such administrative procedures. I think this one needs to come from our superintendent. Only because I know it's going to be exceedingly it's going to be a difficult conversation.
So are you asking that we follow our normal ad hoc procedure process, but whatever recommendation the committee makes, run that through our superintendent first prior to coming to the board?
I guess what I'm saying, if you feel strongly that we want to do this work through an ad hoc committee, I personally would like to see the work done under the direction of our new superintendent, because it's going to be such a difficult topic. It's, doing the reading that I have about it, this has torn communities in half. People have felt very strongly either way, and it's not like long-range planning where they're studying growth. Every 7 to 10 years they're reevaluating it. So there's work that's being done. This is changing our procedure, and so I think changing procedure should come from our new superintendent, other than then we talk about the superintendent in a workshop type situation, but the recommendation is his recommendation because he's the expert, on how it affects the district. It's a different mindset, but I think for me, it makes it clear for the community versus the ad hoc committee presenting to us. We're mulling it over. Our superintendent's kind of weighing in, but we're not really clear. And I think it's more confusing. But
just a couple things, I guess I want clarification from you on there, Lisa, if you don't mind. So you said you want it under the direction of the new superintendent, so that's not Stan, but the next person. So are you saying you want to wait?
I don't think we can get the work done in 6 months to have a formal recommendation. I think this is, with the math ad hoc committee just getting going, that's going to be a lot of work. And then in conjunction with this, I think it would be a lot to take on under interim guidance. And it's not that I don't trust Dr. Olson. I think he's fantastic and he could do a great job. But this will affect our new superintendent, and he will be dealing with all of the parents who either are happy or not happy after we implement this change in procedure. But I'm only one say, so you can see.
Right, and I heard Dave and Tom kind of say, let's get going on this, at least with the information, or the research part of it. And it'll be interesting to see how it plays out and what comment. I was involved and gave Trina a recommendation of a potential committee member whose youngest has now graduated, but was pretty severely impacted last year negatively. Really was doing probably the right thing for their family, which was getting the jump start on her college coursework, but it did impact her in class rank and GPA and those sorts of things in a way that they thought was unfair. Just a couple thoughts. One, I'd like to hear maybe Dr. Olson, your opinion of starting this process midstream where we're going to have a new superintendent in July. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's a great deal of work to be done, and the sooner we get it scheduled and recruit people from our community, and respectfully, I think the community needs to weigh in on this. This is, again, in my superintendent experiences in several districts, there is no right answer here. This is a community deliberation, it's a community review, and ultimately the community is going to, through the committee, advise the board as to the direction they would prefer for how this is structured, how it operates, and how it plays out affecting their students. They'll talk about the collective experiences of their children, both the youngsters who have graduated as well as the youngsters who are moving up in the system, and be able to say, if we go this route, this is how, or if we went this route when my child was in school, this is how that would have impacted. You had alluded to a case earlier. It's got to be a community conversation. A new superintendent coming forward certainly will have an opportunity, whether he or she would have had experiences with this in other places. I think there's still plenty of time for he or she to weigh in on the process, weigh in on the deliberations, and ultimately the recommendation that would come to the board. So I think you're fine. I think the point is well made that we need to have a deep and substantial discussion. I think the eventual selection of the ongoing superintendent we'll have to have that individual weigh in on the process, but I think the timing is right for all of that to happen. So your concern is noteworthy, and I think I've heard it, and I think our staff has heard it, and I think we can have our cake and eat it too here.
Yeah, Casey, can I just point out, then I guess I'm clearly not understanding Board Policy 1310. If you read the procedure, it says clearly that when a procedure is developed, the superintendent shall submit it to the board as an information item prior to implementation. So I think all I'm saying is I would like this to be presented to the board from our superintendent, and then we can decide on it. But I want to hear a recommendation from our superintendent, whether it's Dr. Olson or it's our new superintendent. I don't think it's something that we need to muddle through up here. I would like to hear what our leader is telling us is best for our students, is all I'm saying, based on Board Policy 1310.
Right. I think what Dr. Cottle and probably Dr. Olson with his consultation have done here is recognize that this is not our standard procedure, that this is likely to be controversial, and we're going to have a lot of public opinion. So really she's recommending something that's not in the norm, which is to form an ad hoc committee. Now, by nature, an ad hoc committee is a board committee. They're under the direction of the board. So we tell them what to do. You know, I hear what you're saying. I think that's an important part of it, is that that recommendation and the justification is maybe presented by the superintendent. I think that's fair. I think based on our past practices over the last few years, at least over the last few years, it's been the board's desire to maybe have the preferred recommendation, but to also know the pros and cons, and why we're choosing this path versus that path.
I think a superintendent report would include that, yeah.
I think we're saying the same thing. You know, I mean,
I don't think we're saying the same thing, but it's okay.
Couple things I thought of just why Dr. Olson was talking, why Ms. May was talking. If we're not starting this process till January, probably after the holidays, at least with the formation or first meeting, you know, around the end of January or first part of February, we're going to know who our new person is. So, one, during our interviews or our discussions with our candidates, we're going to have an opportunity to find out what they know about this process. Two, my guess would be whoever we hire, although they're not going to be boots on the ground and be here, you know, they may be, but they may not be. They're going to be getting to know our community and the issues that our district's facing between that February hire date and their July 1st start date. And certainly an issue like this, the math curriculum, anything else that we're doing, our school construction, those sorts of things, we're going to want to make sure that this person's involved, even if they're afar, in knowing what we're doing. So.
Absolutely.
I just had a quick question. I was curious how you guys were, if you've thought about it, going about student input on this as well, current high school students.
That's a really good question. It would be, I mean, it'd be great to have students actually serve on the committee. I know that's a little bit different than what we've done in the past.
I think it's important,
I think it would be,
because they're who we're serving as well, and who are dealing with this, and so I think they'd bring a lot of good information. It may be different than what their parents think, but
and
we're
even
used
if
to
we
that.
couldn't get students that would be willing, I think similar to what we were talking about with parents, it would be nice to reach out and visit with the leadership groups, or have students come and give testimonials to the committee and share their real experiences. It's good advice.
Thank you.
Even recent graduates might be interesting to hear from. You know, how the choices they made impacted them, and where, you know, how that, did it work out the way they thought it was going to, those sorts of things. So I think at this point we have agreement. I think you're looking for our approval to at least put the application out there, form the committee, and we'll see how it goes.
Okay, so next month we'll have a list of potential committee members for you, hopefully. Thank you.
Is that right?
Right.
Okay. It's an info item, so we're not voting on it. We're just giving them a thumbs up. Okay, Dr. Nelson, you have a few new course proposals for us.
I do.
Chair Morrisroe, Superintendent Olson, and members of the board, we're receiving our first snowfall in November, but we're talking March already because we're thinking about new courses. The courses that we offer every year are really dependent on a couple of different things. And number one is the needs of our students. We're constantly looking at our results. We're constantly looking at the qualities of the students that are coming in. And we want to make sure that we have a well-rounded opportunity, our list of courses available for our students. Two new course proposals tonight, both offered currently at Lake City High School. They begin at page 100 of your packet today. The first is called Reading is Thinking. This actually was generated by Shelley Blank, who's the reading specialist at Lake City High School, and was informed by her work in being part of the Thinking Strategies Institute. Her work through that was transformational, and she thought, you know, we really need to look at how we think about teaching reading at the secondary level. So this course would be the first opportunity for her to put those thinking strategies into full exhibit in a reading classroom. The copy that you have received is blank, but with your at least acceptance of it for information this evening, we'll be routing it throughout the entire district, getting cross-curricular review as well as administrative review, because of course if this course is eventually approved by you, it will be available in the course catalogs at Coeur d'Alene, Lake City, and Venture High Schools. So that is Reading is Thinking. The second would be an elective course available at all three of our high schools called Photojournalism. And Mr. Bierstrom at Lake City High School would like to identify or basically rectify a problem that he sees in that they have no longer a school newspaper. They have a dynamic website, but they don't have a way to be able to continually talk about the work that Lake City High School is doing in any of our schools. So this would allow them to train students to basically put together a school blog and show photos and kind of a living document of how the students are enjoying their years at each of our schools. You can see a little bit more about that, including a course pacing guide for each of the courses as well. So tonight they're being presented to you for information. This is the first of our wave. We have a couple of extras that didn't meet our deadline for tonight. But again, our goal is to run them through the process so that they would be available in the course catalogs for spring pre-registration. May I answer any questions?
Can you just refresh us on that process?
Sure. At this particular point, the documents are presented to you for information. After this, once you accept these documents and think at least we can move them forward, there's a review process in here where this goes to the department chair at the receiving schools. So these are both from Lake City High School. So they'll go to review by the departments at both Coeur d'Alene and Venture High School. If they receive that and believe that, yes, this is something that fits the needs of our district, eventually that goes to administration. Administration has the ability to do that. Then from that point, we give it up to you. We accept any comment from our local community, and we present all of that back to you for your consideration at the next meeting, which will be in December.
So it comes back for action next month, or
It does.
info? I can't recall.
It does. This is for information this evening. We'll let you look at it for a while.
Because the hopes is to have this, you said, for spring, an option for.
Correct. We try to preload it because it does take a while for then the course description handbooks and the other schema to be able to come together to allow these courses to be available. And even though these may end up in the course catalog, that does not mean that each school will offer the courses. What they do is they survey their teachers, they look at their schedules, and they look at the opportunities that students are presenting to them to be able to find out what really fits their needs for this coming year.
Any other questions on these course proposals? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nelson. Okay. Item G really was a request of the board, or several board members, to look at policy, or at least to start a public discussion on policy 3265, which is our personal electronic device. And that was in our packet. This is starting on page 120. Is there someone who wants to go first on that? Mr. Eubanks? Guessing you have an opinion. Go ahead, sir.
No, I don't have an opinion on anything. Hey, I don't mean to be contentious, but about 3 years ago, at the urging of a couple of high school math teachers, our board right here in this room created a policy to allow secondary students, with their teacher's permission, to BYOD, bring their own device to school, such as a smartphone, to be used for specific educational purposes, such as in Common Core math and other challenging subjects. We did this because our district didn't have enough devices of its own to go around, and because we felt that granting such leeway to students would enhance their learning. And it did. The policy was designed with specific guidelines and limitations, which, in hindsight, were apparently not specific enough. So here we are now 3 years later, and having spent a boatload of money on technology in our district, we now have, with a little bit of sharing, enough devices to do away with BYOD, which is to say that the reason for creating the policy in the first place no longer exists, and which is also to say that it makes some sense at this time to consider maybe getting rid of the policy altogether, especially since 3 years later, as an unintended consequence of this policy to help improve education, we now have a cell phone problem in too many of our schools that I believe is actually undermining education. Since this school year started, I have heard complaints about cell phones from at least 30 different teachers in our district, most of whom have described the situation in their schools as simply crazy. Student use of cell phones is at the root of a whole new array of distractions and disruptions, both in class and in the halls, promoting rumors and sometimes even to a degree panic, as in the case of Lake City High School a few weeks ago, creating a mounting list of discipline referrals and interfering with the development of positive social skills in our young people, purposefully provoking teachers to anger and then filming and posting the results on social media to shame them, sharing obscene images, and worse. I believe time has come to bring this problem to an end. I think it's time for some common sense. This board is compelled to ensure that the most positive teaching and learning environment exists in every one of our classrooms and schools. This responsibility is not only to our students, staff, and administrators, but also to every stakeholder in our community. I would remind you that this board has set the important goal of raising academic achievement. And as a 43-year veteran classroom teacher, I feel that getting students' cell phones out of our classrooms and commons areas can only help. As such, I'm asking my fellow board members to join me in addressing and hopefully fixing this problem in the near future. Thank you.
I have a couple comments. I too have heard about problems with cell phones. I'm not convinced that the problem 100% is our policy, and maybe the policy that we have now has not been adequately enforced. The question is, you're supposed, the students, a couple things. One is the policy is supposed to be posted according to our policy. It's supposed to be, students are supposed to be aware of it, and they're supposed to sign an agreement, okay? The policy, I think, is fairly good. Parts of it I would change, though. When I was reading this thing over pretty closely, and it says that students grades K to 5, can bring their cell phones to school, but they're to be powered off completely, and unless they're used for specific educational and instructional purposes with the teacher's permission. However, at the high school level, it doesn't say they have to be turned off. They just have to be turned on to vibrate or silent mode. I think that's a problem. I think, I think that if we're going to allow, cell phones are here to stay, and I think if they are going to be in school, unless the instructor specifically wants to use them for educational or instructional purposes, and that has to be clear, you know. And if we don't have other devices, like, and because we spent a ton of money, like you see, you call it a boatload of money on Chromebooks and other things.
I think it was 23 million.
So, you know, if we don't have other ways of accessing the information, then I don't have a problem with using them. But otherwise, I think they should be off, because the problem is they're not off, and kids are looking at them. Kids are, you know, it's distracting. I've heard some teachers. I haven't had 30 teachers, but I've had a few talk to me, and they said things like, you know, during that week when there was all this stuff going on over at Lake City High School, they're saying, it sure is nice that kids are actually talking to each other. They're not looking at their cell phones all the time. They are, you know, they are interacting with each other. So I'm definitely think we need to revisit the policy. I'm not convinced we should throw this one out. I think if it was enforced better, then maybe we'd be in a, that might work also. So if you look at some of the policy, I mean, it talks about, you know, you can't be taking pictures of teachers and stuff. That's invasion of privacy, and you can't be intimidating people, and you can't be using it to exchange information because that's considered cheating, and you can't use it in restrooms or locker rooms. Those are all good things. All that stuff is good. And I actually like a lot of and that there's no expectation of confidentiality when you have a cell phone, and that it's a privilege, not a right. All the wording, I think it's pretty good in the policy, but I think the problem is we've made a mistake is allowing kids to have their cell phone on all the time. I think it should be turned off and in class unless the teacher tells you to turn it on for specific reasons. That's my opinion. I'm open to the discussion, though. I haven't completely made my mind up on this issue, but I'm open to the discussion. So I may have more to say later, but I'm interested in what other board members think.
Lynn, I have a question for you. Our board and our policies change frequently around here. So do you remember back to 2009 when we limited the use of cell phones? Rosie Astorkia was in charge at that time. And so what was the reason behind changing policy then? Do you remember? And can we pull those minutes and can we refresh ourselves? You know, I have a couple quotes from her. Within a very short period of time, there was just an understanding. In Coeur d'Alene, the policy applies to middle and high school students. They were allowed to carry their cell phones, but they had to be turned off during learning hours. They were able to use them before and after school and during lunch. Do you remember, you know, what?
I remember that discussion.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'd have to refresh my memory.
It was in 2009, and it looks like it was about July, like summertime maybe. But I would be curious if we're going to revisit this policy again, so we're not changing back and forth, a little history, why they decided to limit the use of cell phones.
If it would be helpful, I can gather notes from minutes from those board meetings when those discussions took place. I can forward those to you.
Maybe also the 2012 timeframe when this policy was put in place too, I think would be helpful, just potentially what's in those notes.
And when it's possible, can we bring some principals and some people in to talk at the next meeting about their, you know, I'd like to hear what the staff is thinking about these policies.
Yeah, I mean, that's a couple things I had here, or a couple ideas I had, I guess. One, I think I tend to agree with Mr. Hearn in that the policy's fairly well written. I think it's, how is it enforced? What is the awareness? I was a little surprised as I also read this in detail, and I've signed these technology agreements for my students, but here's a line that struck me. Students are prohibited from accessing the internet through their own data plan. How many kids you think are aware of that, and how many actually do that, turn off their data plans when they're in school? I would guess it's very few, and that's a difficult thing to enforce. You know, when it talked about all levels of students, there's a line in there that says with teachers' permission and supervision. So I get a little confused, I guess. You know, how are students using their cell phones in the class when they're not supposed to be, if, you know, the teacher hasn't recommended it? because the policy says, it's with their permission. So if they aren't, it's right in there what the consequences are. The phone's taken away, and I understand there's 35, 40 kids in the classroom. You don't want to babysit cell phones. I think, to me, what I would like to see, I think this is another very controversial one. I think we'll hear from lots of people on this. I would like to see some, if we're going to look at this policy, that we do some surveying from students, from parents, from staff particularly. Because I think while there's a number of ineffective use of it, there's probably some great examples in certain classrooms where they're doing great things with cell phones. So it's you don't want to take that away. I had a parent talk to me about their student who has a health condition, and they want to know, if something happens, they want to be aware. They want that child to be able to text mom or dad and say, hey, I'm not feeling good, and that could be in lots of instances, whether that's a diabetic or whatever the health condition is. So I think that's another angle we have to look at. I am certainly concerned about cell phones in classrooms. I was talking with one of the administrators, and I said, I don't know that I've ever done a high school tour where I didn't walk into a classroom and there was at least one kid on a cell phone. Whether they were doing that under the desk or what, or maybe they had permission, I don't know. In my house, my kids, they can have their cell phone before school and after school, and during school it's put away. They can have it at school, but it better be off. That's my family's rule, but everyone's got a little different view on that. So personally, I don't mind looking at this policy and maybe making some tweaks. I would like to see us do some surveying of parents, students, teachers to get a little more feedback.
I don't mind looking at the policy as well. I thought it was pretty good. There does need to be some tweaks, but I do think the problem lies with the enforcement of the policy. And what does that look like in the schools if you've got one teacher who's enforcing it and then the student then goes to their next class where it could be a free-for-all? What are we going to do about that? And maybe we need to tighten up or put something in there, and getting feedback is where we need to start with people that are in the building, teachers in the building with the students, trying to teach when they're dealing with these things, and what does it look like in their classroom when they're allowing the students to use their cell phones as tools for educating or not, because I don't think I've been in a high school either that haven't walked in a class and seen the same thing, either earbuds in an ear or someone doing something that they probably shouldn't have been doing that wasn't educationally beneficial. So I'm curious to hear the feedback on that and taking a look at this.
I just looked at a quick look. Does anybody know what Post Falls does for their cell phone policy? I know that Spokane District 81 allows the schools to choose what they want their cell phone policy to be, and then Central Valley does not allow cell phones in the class. They can be used, off lunchtime, before and after school, but they don't allow cell phones during class.
Spokane lets each school.
Each school chooses at their, discretion how they will handle the cell phone policy.
I believe the Charter Academy doesn't allow them on at all during the day.
And primarily, all of the schools in Spokane had a no cell phone policy. I mean, I didn't look at every school because there was a lot, but it seemed the majority of them had a no cell phone policy.
I'm just concerned about the teaching and learning environment and how distracting and disruptive this can be, having been a teacher. I did see a little video the other day from a classroom in China, and a teacher was teaching, and he saw somebody playing with a cell phone, and he walked over and just picked it up without saying a word, went back to his desk where he had a bucket of water, dropped it in there, and continued right on teaching. I'm not suggesting we do that, but there are ways to rein this in, okay? Just give every teacher a bucket? I don't know.
Casey, can we also find out maybe from Seth if our teachers need do they need this? Is the BYOD device policy as applicable today as it was when it was written? So if a teacher wants to use Quizlet or whatever reason they need the device, do they need it?
I think we survey that.
Right.
You know, and just see with the increase in devices, has that changed the need for cell phones for an educational purpose? You know, it was very different 3 years ago when we were 4-to-1 on devices. But certainly, I think in our secondary schools, our high schools, I think we're basically at 1-to-1, or real close to it.
So I was wondering if those are roving carts or if the teacher actually has access to the Chromebooks in her room where, hey, we're going to, oh, here comes
I
Seth. He
see
knows.
Seth coming to.
Oh, good, Seth is coming.
I saw Trina fumbling with her mic, so I figured I'd help her.
Well, I know you have the data, 'cause anyway, it's all yours.
Board Chair Morrisroe, members of the board, Superintendent Olson. It is true that we do have a lot more devices now than we did even just 3 years ago. So most of our schools have enough to basically be 1-to-1 at this point. Specifically at the high schools, we're getting really close to having a dedicated device for every student. So certainly it does look different. There are different things that you can do on mobile devices than Chromebooks, certainly, but I think the consideration is definitely much different today than it was even 3 years ago.
Well, I would agree that with the comments that we do need to survey parents, students, and staff. The staff, I was hoping there'd be staff who would be here and would speak up, because some of them really were pretty verbal to me. Parents have been, Casey talked about this, medical problems, and I think we could have exceptions for that. Possibly, we could have a policy that said if somebody had a medical problem that maybe they wouldn't be allowed to have their cell phone on. But I mean, I'm an old guy, but I do remember, if parents want to get a hold of you, they would call the school, and the message would be sent down to the classroom, or vice versa. I mean, whatever happened about that. I mean, I remember there was runners in schools, sending messages around. So I guess what I'm just saying is that I think I'd like to hear from the students. I see some students sitting in the audience there, and I can't tell by the rolling of their eyes if they're in favor, what their thoughts are about it. I'd like to hear what you have to say. But our duty is to enhance the educational environment in the schools. That's our job. And I've found, and I may be wrong, but I've found that kids carrying around cell phones that are on all the time is distraction. And it's a distraction in the classroom. And I just think that unless there's a good educational reason for them, they shouldn't be on. And that's my opinion. But I'm willing to listen to students, listen to staff, parents too. I understand you wanting to get a hold of your child, but exception of rare situations where there's a medical problem, I don't think that's as important as maybe the environment in the classroom for all the other students there.
So we could survey our teachers and pretty easily this month?
Let me make a quick suggestion. Let's draft a process for your approval to review this. That would include survey work. That would include some sessions with students, staff, community, where the board can hear that input, can weigh the pros and cons of different practices, and then off of that process, if it's deemed appropriate, either A, make some alterations in the current policy, or B, move in a different direction. But I think we should situate a process and can do that in pretty short order. I think this is a hot topic now coming off of our previous experience, but it's one that's not going to go away. And it's one that, given a particular day, can either be magnified or minimized. But it's worthy of a conversation, it's worthy of a process, and I see our student colleagues out here going, I'm ready to weigh in on this right now. And that's what we want to have. You represent leadership in your schools and in this community from the student body. Let's have that dialogue, let's have that conversation, and let's come up with good information to help us and help our board drive a good decision.
I've already talked with them. They're with me.
We're interview
Just
planted in the
kidding.
audience.
Chair Morrisroe, may I make a comment?
Sure.
I would just like to comment too, the situation with Lake City also occurred with cell phone and social media use outside the school day, which we don't have control of. And so as we're looking at Board Policy Review 8300 bomb threats, I think that looking at that policy and procedure would dovetail nice into the work with the cell phone policy as well.
And I also had a point of clarification. Much of what we've been talking about, or much of what you've been talking about, actually falls in the procedures. The policy itself is relatively generic and pretty benign, but the procedures themselves are really pretty detailed and outline both do's and don'ts as well as some consequences. So it sounds to me like much of what we're talking about is adjusting the procedures, not necessarily the policy, although that might be part of this discussion too.
Thank you, Seth.
With the direction of the board, we'll go to work on this and pull together a process and bring it to you and move it down the discussion agenda.
And I agree with you. I think we need to get on this right away. It is a problem that is only going to get worse if we don't do anything.
I would agree. I'd just like to see, I think it's more important that we get good information and good input than do it quickly. So if that makes sense. Let's not just rush. Let's actually get input, feedback. Thank you. Okay, item H is policy for information. We have this section 8,000 policies, 31 of them. It's just partial of the 8,000 that we saw a few weeks ago at our board workshop, policy workshop. And then there's a number of others in here. Who's handling these, or is it jumping around based on the policy a little bit? So these are all for information, not action. Okay. So I'll turn it over to administration, whoever wants to go first.
I think I'm first on the list. Good evening. The section I worked on with our committee was the transportation section. There's 19 policies in here. We had our workshop earlier, a couple weeks ago, and went through and made some suggested changes. Most of what is in our policy is what we do. There are some changes based upon recommendations from the State Department and from ISBA. So at this point, I'll just entertain any questions on the transportation piece.
Board members, any questions on these? Again, we saw these about 2 weeks ago. Okay. Sounds like no. So next.
I believe that I would be next then. So this is continuing with section 8,000, and then we get down to the emergency ones, and there's only 12 policies. So we again broke these out so they all didn't come through. Some that we're still working on, but the ones that we did are the ones in your packet here. And I think there was two that were new that I wanted to point. Thank you. Two that were new here for you that I wanted to bring attention to you, and that would be 8310 automated external defibrillators and 8615 law enforcement units and law enforcement records. And so the automated external defibrillators, Justin Fine and our nurse, Nicole. Sorry if I get your name wrong, Nicole, if you're listening to this, but it's Piotrowski? Pekarsky.
That's on page 168 is 8310.
Thank you. And then the law enforcement one was Justin Fine and Seth. Went over that in that one. Not sure what page it is on yours, but it should be there at the very last
see here.
8605. Is that the one you're talking about?
8615.
1.5, I think.
Oh, 1.5.
Thank you. Okay. Again, these policies are out for information, so they'll be available for public for 30-day comment. We'll see them in a month or so for action.
Yes.
Seth, are you next up?
I actually had that same section. I just all the new ones that you didn't see at the workshop. Justin Fine and myself worked on in conjunction with Chris. So just want to make sure you didn't have any questions.
I've got a question on 8605, which is the retention of district records.
Mm-hmm.
And down there at the bottom where it's destruction of electronic mail, email.
Yep.
The district will store electronic email for a maximum period of 12 months. Not a minimum of 12 months?
No, it'd be a maximum. So currently we do 2 years, and in speaking with our lawyers, they actually recommend a maximum of 6 months. 12 months, though, for our business operations would be preferable. And I believe we spoke a little bit about that at the workshop also.
What's the minimum?
Oh.
I guess would be my question. Or do we need to state the minimum?
No,
we
we
can
could
dump them the
even
next
take
day.
maximum out and just say 12 months, because we'll keep them for 12 months.
Yeah, I think I would like that better. Just the way that's written, to me, it sounds like anything less than 12 is okay. So could you
Sure.
data
You bet.
dump email, every week?
Yeah.
And I don't think we want to do that. I don't think that's the intention, but I think we should just make it clear with our intention.
I have a question.
So it's
After
a-
workshop, how did you figure out what you were going to do to standardize? Remember all the different recommendations? It was confusing. So I see now a lot of them are struck out. Did you find a good source to help?
So that whole table, which is very lengthy, we're still working with ISBA to find out where each individual cell came from, because what we don't want to do, I mean, you can see it's like 5 pages. What we don't want to do is, it's actually more than 5 pages. Looks like it's like 7. We're trying to get clarification from them on where all of that came from before we adopt it into procedures, because it is quite lengthy and we don't want to add more burden to our staff.
So that'll come back as a procedure, or that'll be
Yeah.
developed into procedure as it's clarified?
Yep.
Okay. If there were little typo type stuff, you just want me to email that to you? Okay. I saw a couple. Okay. So any questions on the 8,000s? All right. I'm guessing student fees is Katie?
So we had a pretty decent policy for student fees, fines, charges and returns of property. However, we had a couple questions from Lake City High School as far as course fees and ways that those could be charged to the students. And I helped the staff members kind of understand the board's direction based on the court cases in Idaho on not charging any fees or fines for anything that is relating to the instructional day. However, I thought it might be appropriate to get some clear language into policy so I could point staff members in that direction if any questions come up in the future.
Okay. This started on page 196. Again, we've had to adjust practice and policy just based on a court case from a few years ago about what could be charged and what could not. Okay, any questions for Katie on these? That's 3440 and 3445. Okay, Trina, I think I skipped you on one, which is 34F. That's a form for, I guess that was tied into 8,000. But if you remember, board, we had some talk about that at the workshop, and really parents are going to be able to request and sign a form that allows them to transport their student to activities now. And that'll
Correct.
be going both directions.
In both directions, and it could be an individual activity, such as one basketball game, or it could be the entire season.
Okay.
And so just to verify, the shooting contest down in Boise, parents can drive their kids there and back.
Once it's approved.
Once it's approved, they don't have to ride a bus, okay.
Okay, 5340 and 5340P, evaluation of instructional certificated personnel.
Yep, that's me. Those are just minor changes that came through ISBA and also through attorneys as we met down in Moscow on some revisions. Really, we just added some definitions for clarification and moved a couple things around, but really pretty minor changes.
Kelly, did we have language around evaluations in negotiations last year?
Yes, all of this that is in the black ink is our original.
Okay. So that's all still in there, whatever we talked about?
Yes.
I can't remember what.
It's about the cameras.
No, I can't even remember what it was. I thought it was about evaluations, but.
Oh, length of
is that what it was?
Maybe.
Is that what it was, Bruce? Okay. I was thinking it was timing or something of it, but like more when they occurred.
It is in there.
Okay. And then 77, any questions on that one for Kelly before we move on? Okay, 7700 and 7710.
These are policies that ISBA presented when we were doing the 7000s rewrite. However, we were working with Danielle Quaid at the time on our bond issue, and she had some language that was a little bit different from what ISBA had. And basically, we decided to pull those from when we presented the 7000s rewrite to have Danielle's policies instead. However, we kind of dropped the ball on that. They fell through the cracks with all the rest of the sections, so we are getting them to you now. And we decided to present Danielle. This is ISBA's policy, but it's redlined with Danielle Quaid's language. We just thought that because she put it together specifically and she's got that expertise, that we would just go with her language. So.
Only question I had on this was just where we're designating the administrator. They had in their director of finance and operation, and that's been changed to business manager. Can you just explain that, just because it falls under your purview? Or?
Well, and that's something I didn't catch actually. Business manager in some districts, that would be the director of finance in smaller districts. So it might have been just some terminology that Danielle was using for another district that she put into here as well. So I did not catch that.
But you're our business manager.
I am,
okay.
Yeah.
So what would the intention be, I guess, there? Is it to have it be under Chris's purview?
Yeah, I think it should be under Chris's purview. So.
Okay. So we'll change all those back to.
Yes.
All right. Seems like it should be, and then if he delegates that, he delegates that. Okay. Any other questions on these? Okay, let's move on. Item I, we're into action items now. Item I is our annual audit
So,
Chris, go ahead.
not to be confused with J, which is coming up next. The annual audit one, I believe, is just, we had the audit presentation. If you found no fault with the presentation, with the audit, then you can say accepted.
Yep. So there's some magic words here. It's on page 216, and we need a motion to accept the annual audit as presented.
Make the motion to accept the annual audit as presented.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Item J is similar in nature in that
This is very similar in nature. So this is reporting, correct me if I'm wrong here, Katie. This is reporting to the state with the same, if you will, iFarms, our general ledger accounts to the state that matches with the audit. And it requires you guys to say, yes, those were the same numbers in our audit that we presented.
I make a motion to authorize the board chair to sign the 2016-17 annual report certification.
Second.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 I think we got them all. Any opposed? All right, we're getting sleepy. K is the math course pathway ad hoc committee. Dr. Nelson,
Hi
I
there.
see you waving your arm.
I'm here. I'm trying to wake you back up again. Chair Morrisroe, Superintendent Olson, and members of the board, for the last several months we've been talking about the state of secondary mathematics and multiple pathways of improvement. We've already started a lot of that work with our own internal professional development through Minds on Math, through thinking strategies and a variety of other methods that we're trying to improve upon. That's been purveying us some nice dividends already. However, one of the things that we wanted to talk to you about is a long-term change, and to be able to look at that, we wanted to put together an ad hoc committee representative of both proponents and critics and those in the current classrooms and those in the receiving classrooms from higher ed as well. Tonight we present to you several names and applications in your packet for review, starting on page 219. I believe that these names and applications thoroughly represent not only a brain trust of mathematics intent and instruction, but also can give us an opportunity to look at our current states and identify some things that we need to look at maybe even a little bit deeper. Hopefully coming to you within the next several months as to a new pathway for mathematics, an existing maintenance of our existing pathway, or just looking at everything in between. I have an addition for you if you would also be interested. We received another application this afternoon at 2:15. It is beyond the deadline date. However, you may recognize the name of Sam Hunter, who seems to always come up like a good penny. He is an engineer by trade, has served on multiple ad hoc committees, including our current literature committees, and last year served on our career and technical education ad hoc committee. And for whatever reason, he keeps picking up the phone when we call him. But we did reach out to Sam. He just had a little delay in getting an application back. If you would be interested in looking at the application, our amazing clerk, Lynn, has that for you to be able to review as well. So we present the names for you and would like to have your approval to put this subcommittee together that would meet over the next several months. We'd also like to ask for a board liaison to be a part of that work. And then we'll come to you in the next couple of weeks with some discussion and a possible recommendation.
Board, any questions for Dr. Nelson on this?
I was just impressed by the people. I read all the applications, everybody from Julie Amador to all these people. Good people, and in the district, of course, but I'm thinking about the community members.
We knew that this topic would be engaging to people. And certainly when you have somebody of the quality of Julie Amador, who served on our initial committee, she brings a lot of that history back in. There's a new mathematics chair at North Idaho College. You can see he's in there as well. So we have
those pathways fully identified. And again, our goal is to be able to graduate students who are well-rounded enough to be able to take their mathematics wherever they want to apply it, for the workforce or into post-secondary. I think we have a variety of different perspectives here that will really make this discussion very rich.
So is there a motion to approve the members as listed with the addition of Mr. Sam Hunter?
Correct.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye, and I know Sam Hunter, you can't do any better than that.
Any opposed? Okay, Dr. Nelson said it real quietly there, but they're also looking for a board liaison for this committee.
You want me to say it louder?
I saw everyone duck, yeah.
Oh.
I'll do it.
Good.
There we have it.
Look at that.
Look at that.
So I have a quick math quiz that I'd like to provide you.
I'm going to back out.
There's an entrance
Your
exam.
skills are right there, so thank you, Mrs. Pickford.
Okay.
Would not be helpful in that committee.
All right, action item L is from long range planning. There's a couple items here. Lisa, are you, I don't think I.
Yeah, Steve, you stayed. You wanna
Steve,
speak?
doing these?
That's right. You better talk.
Is this on? Chair Morrisville, Superintendent Olson, members of the board. Thank you for allowing our committee this opportunity to share with you the progress of Long Range Planning Committee up to date. Over the summer, we added 4 new members to replace those that completed their term or decided not to continue. That maintained our membership at 25 to begin this school year. Our bylaws state that we could have 28 members and 3 alternates. I just don't see everybody knocking down the doors to want to be on all these committees. Additionally, we wanted to have every school have some representation. To that end, we worked hard in September and October to boost membership. In the last month, we had 1 resignation and 4 new applications. That brings our total to 28 voting members and 1 alternate. Unfortunately, we still do not have a representative for Venture or Nexa. In our bylaws, and I'm not sure whether you have a copy of that, we did change some wording in regards to attendance. The current language read, if a regular committee member misses 3 consecutive meetings of the committee without valid reason, the position shall be filled from the alternate list. That had some holes in it. We believe, the committee believes that missing 3, whether they're in a row or not, is way too many, especially if there's no legitimate reason. So we propose the following language change. If a regular committee member misses 3 meetings during a school year without valid reason as determined by the chairperson, the position shall be filled from the alternate list. If no alternates are available, the position will be filled the next school year. Our feeling there is this is a volunteer committee. There's things that come up. All we ask for is that you notify us when possible so that we'll always have a quorum. There were times when we didn't have a quorum, and to get people to show up and spend their time and not have a quorum was kind of frustrating. So we believe this will help us. We're really excited that we have a full committee now and do our work. At our October meeting, we selected a vice chair. The vice chair will assume the chair for the 2018-2019 school year. I'm happy to inform you that Jerry Anderson was selected to that position. Many of you probably know Jerry. He had a 5-page bio he wanted me to read, but I cut it down. But I think it's important that you know who some of these people are on the committee. Jerry is married to his wife, Becky. She teaches at Lake City High School. They've had 3 sons graduate from schools, or Lake City High School in our district. He's an architect professional by trade. He graduated from North Dakota State University. He's had 35 years practicing in Coeur d'Alene, so certainly he knows the background. He's previously served a 4-year term on Long Range Planning Committee, 2008 to 2012. He was the Long Range Planning Chairman in 2012 when the previous bond proposal was presented to the school board. So we have in our wings here, someone that knows our district, knows our process, knows our people, knows our community. So I'm really excited to have him sit next to me, and certainly with board member May on that committee, we have some people that have been around a long time, which I think is only bodes well for our school district. At this point, we have concentrated on sharing with our new board members how we arrived at this point, sharing past history of previous long-range planning committees, how we arrived at the 2017 bond levy request, the progress we have made in the new construction and related cost, and introduced information that speaks to future facility needs. Last month, we scheduled our meeting at Coeur d'Alene High School. Principal Schuler gave us a tour of the proposed construction at CHS and the timeline for that construction. At our next meeting on December 11th, we are scheduled to tour Lake City High School and meet with Principal Clifford. We also hope to tour Dalton, Fernan, Hayden Meadows, and Lakes. We believe it's vital that our committee not only see what's been requested on the bond, but actually have a physical sense of what that is and why it is needed. Our meetings have been comprehensive and informative. The input of Dr. Olson, Scott Mabin, Chris Shipley, and Brian Martin has been invaluable. They have provided our committee with a solid foundation on which to begin asking pertinent and timely questions, such as, what's next? What do we do if we don't find property in the northwest portion of our district? What's our plan if we don't? Do we have future facility needs? And if so, what are those? How much do they cost? When can we run another levy, et cetera, et cetera? We thank the board for their support of the Long Range Planning Committee. And in the spirit of transparency, we continue to reach out to our community seeking their input. In so doing, we encourage them to utilize the SWOT method that brought to us and championed by Superintendent Olson. And again, that stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And so in those discussions, we believe we are transparency and we get the good, the bad, and the ugly as we communicate with our community. As a committee, we realize the task at hand, and we are prepared to work cooperatively with our community in tandem with our, cooperatively within our committee, so sometimes we don't always agree on the same things, in tandem with our community. We're in this together, and certainly in partnership with our school board to reach our collective goals. That concludes my remarks. I'll stand for any questions.
I just wanted to recognize Steve. He's put together, and your nominating committee, a tremendous group of people who I know are going to work tirelessly this year, so thank you.
Thank you. I'm off the hook. Thank you very much.
Hey, just real quick, I always got to pick on you. No, I appreciate it. I attended this past long-range planning committee, and I was really happy to see the group of people you had there, the attendance. I think that bylaw change is something that's been desperately needed because it is a volunteer committee and it can be a big time commitment. But if people aren't there, it's hard to make it work, and it's hard to catch people up when there's a lot going on. So I appreciate you making the change there. So,
thank you.
Nice job.
Thank you very much.
Good job, Steve. Thanks.
So we've got two items from long range here. One would be, is there a motion to approve the revised long range planning committee bylaw language as presented?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, and the next, or the other item with those folks would be a motion to approve the new long-range planning committee members as presented for the 17-18 school year.
So moved.
Seconded.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Almost done, folks. Call for committee report. Lisa, Steve did a nice job there, but do you got anything you want to add to it? Okay. Well, he took an extra 5 minutes there, but he saved us 5 minutes here, so it balanced out.
I was told I had 10.
Sure. couple important dates coming up. We've talked about tomorrow several times, but we have our meeting with our superintendent search group at 4 o'clock in this building. Starting Wednesday through Friday, we have the Idaho School Board Association Annual Conference. November 15th, we have the Data Summit 2.0. And then November workshop, we need to pick a date. We'd already talked, we're probably going to focus mainly on our construction projects. We met about Lake City and Coeur d'Alene High. This would be Lakes, Dalton, and the new elementary. Right? Typically, we do the third Monday of the month. That would be November 20th. That's that's the week of Thanksgiving, so we weren't sure what availability was that week. There's some parent-teacher conferences for elementary. Is that right? Would also be in Lakesgiving. Didn't we talk about doing this early on that day? That was one option. Lakesgiving is at 6 o'clock? 5 o'clock? So we talked about doing kind of a late afternoon, 3 to 5 or something. Then people could go to Lakesgiving if they want. It might get Lakes participation.
How about 3 to 4?
Yeah, we've got a lot to talk about there between Lakes, Dalton, and the elementary. I just don't know that an hour is quite enough. The only concern with doing it then is it's during the work day, so that might be more difficult to get people to attend.
And don't we have a need to talk about land?
Yeah, that. Well, I said elementary, but it would fall under the elementary.
I would propose that that combination of conversation will at least take a couple of hours.
I think that might be hard to get parents. I wasn't thinking about if we wanted to get input on land in elementary. That might be, if we really want to get input, it might be hard on conference night for elementary. I don't know.
Right. I mean, again, that whole week is probably going to be hard, but we can meet and then figure out our outreach from there if we have questions, and work on some outreach over a couple of week period. Try to get something done before Christmas as far as getting feedback on any proposals we have. Okay, so the 20th, and do we want to do 3 o'clock on the 20th?
Yeah, I'm good.
3 to 5. Okay. All right. Or do we want to do it at Lakes? Or no? With their Lakesgiving, will that be a issue? Okay. Maybe we should do it here because it's our standard location.
So 3 to 5 on the 20th.
Okay. If there's nothing further, meeting's adjourned.